Welcome to the Economist in Your Ear podcast. What happens when the world's most powerful technology is abruptly locked behind a digital border, while locking out not just adversaries, but a nation's closest allies, and even the very scientists building the technology?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like the setup to like a paranoid techno thriller or
It
something.
really does, but for a lot of people, that just became reality. Imagine you're a British cybersecurity researcher, right?
Yeah.
You're sitting in a lab in San Francisco. It's a Friday afternoon in June 2026.
It's a normal Friday.
Exactly. You are actively debugging code for one of the most sophisticated pieces of technology ever created. And then suddenly, your screen just goes black.
Wow.
Your access credentials just evaporate. You haven't been fired, you haven't done anything wrong, you've just been locked out of the AI model you built yourself, and it was done by the United States government.
It's just wild. And today we're unpacking an incredible piece of reporting from The Economist titled, Donald Trump has cut off access to the world's best AI model.
Right, and it covers this sudden directive that ordered Anthropic to basically construct a digital border wall around its frontier models, Fable 5 and Mythos 5.
Which means banning all non-Americans. So foreign governments, international banks, and like you said, even Anthropic's own foreign-born developers. They just can't access the system anymore.
And we really want to bring this to you today because it fundamentally shifts the ground beneath the entire global tech landscape. This isn't just about some company losing, API revenue.
No, not at all.
This is about the United States effectively trying to seize sovereign control over digital intelligence. But the mechanics of how this actually happened and the wildly contradictory stories about why it happened, they're just full of massive logical gaps. We basically have two completely colliding narratives here.
Yeah, the disparity between the official explanation and what's supposedly happening behind closed doors is, well, it's stark. If you look at the administration side of the story, this entire geopolitical earthquake was actually triggered by Amazon.
Amazon, that's fascinating considering their massive financial stake in Anthropic.
Right, they have a huge stake. But Amazon CEO Andy Jassy reportedly contacted the White House to warn them about severe security flaws in the Fable 5 model.
Like specifically vulnerabilities that allowed the model to be jailbroken, right?
Exactly. And to understand the fallout, you really have to look at the White House's immediate reaction to that warning. White House advisor David Sachs claimed publicly on X that the government contacted Anthropic's CEO, Dario Amodei, and basically gave him a strict ultimatum.
An ultimatum to do what, exactly?
Fix the jailbreak vulnerability or completely pull the Fable model offline. And Sachs claims that Amodei flat out refused.
Which I guess paints Amodei as this rogue executive who's just ignoring national security.
That's certainly the framing, yeah.
But the narrative completely fractures when you look at Anthropic's internal accounts. Their sources claim the government's directive simply cited an unspecified national security threat regarding foreign nationals.
Wait, so no mention of the jailbreak?
Zero. There was zero mention of an ultimatum about a jailbreak, or Amodei refusing to patch anything. And even more incredibly, Anthropic points out they had just completed extensive pre-release testing with government officials.
Oh, right. And those officials didn't raise a single red flag about these supposed vulnerabilities.
Right. So the government supposedly tests the model, gives it a pass, and then abruptly drops the hammer because of a third-party report. It starts to look really strange.
It does. And if you look at the technical reality of what Amazon actually flagged, it gets even murkier. The article brings in Katie Masuris. She's a heavy hitter in the world of software vulnerabilities.
Oh, yeah, she knows her stuff.
Absolutely. And she looked at the techniques used to expose this jailbreak and noted that they are primarily designed to assist cyber defenders.
Which is a critical nuance that just seems completely lost in all this political theater. In cybersecurity, exposing a vulnerability isn't inherently like a catastrophic failure that means you have to shut down the entire grid.
Right. It's called red teaming. You stress test the AI's guardrails to generate data so defenders can build stronger heuristics.
Exactly. So if Anthropic were to just hard code a blind patch over the vulnerability just to appease a sudden government demand,
They would effectively blind their own white hat researchers.
yes, they'd lose visibility into how the model behaves under adversarial pressure. So the demand to just fix it might actually make the underlying architecture less secure in the long run.
Which is incredibly counterproductive.
Right. And it really makes me question the administration's stated motive here. I mean, if patching the jailbreak is technically bad for cyber defense, Is it possible this whole narrative is just a convenient smokescreen?
Like pulling the fire alarm just to clear the building?
Exactly. You create a sudden, localized emergency to justify a much larger, predetermined eviction of foreign influence.
Well, that theory definitely gains a lot of traction when you examine the actual legal mechanism the administration used to execute the ban. Charlie Bullock from the Institute for Law and AI analyzed the move, and he suspects they essentially weaponized the Commerce Department's export administration regulations.
But wait, aren't those regulations historically designed for, like, tangible physical assets?
Yeah, mostly.
We're usually talking about blocking the export of advanced silicon, like NVIDIA chips or those massive EUV lithography machines required to manufacture them. Applying that physical framework to a cloud-based API seems like a massive legal contortion.
It is an aggressive, arguably unprecedented expansion of the law. You are suddenly treating API calls to a server farm in Virginia as if they're literally crates of weapons-grade plutonium being loaded onto a cargo ship.
That's wild.
And this legal stretch brings us directly to the political subtext driving the policy.
Right, and before we dig into that, I want to make it completely clear to you, the listener, that as we discuss these political motivations, we are strictly analyzing the events and claims as they're reported in the source material.
Yeah, we aren't taking a stance or endorsing any partisan viewpoints regarding the current administration.
Exactly. We just have to look at the documented history here to understand the context of the ban.
And the context is, frankly, highly adversarial. Prior to this directive, Donald Trump had publicly labeled Anthropic an out-of-control radical left AI company.
Okay, so there was already public friction.
Oh, a lot of it. And the hostility isn't just rhetorical. 3 months before this Friday afternoon ban, the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, explicitly kicked Anthropic out of Pentagon contracts.
Wow.
Yeah, and on June 13th, he was publicly boasting about it, stating that every passing day proved it was the right move.
So putting those pieces together, it's hard not to view this through the lens of a targeted domestic power struggle. If the administration is simply using export controls to punish a company they view as a political adversary,
then the collateral damage is staggering.
Exactly. You have researchers, allied governments, and global financial institutions getting caught in the crossfire of an American political feud.
Right. That is the cynical interpretation, and to be fair, it carries a lot of weight. But a rigorous analysis requires us to test the alternative hypothesis too.
Okay, meaning what?
What if the administration's fear is entirely genuine? We have to evaluate the raw capability of a frontier model like Mythos.
Well, let's actually play that out. When a government panics and tries to restrict software, my mind instantly goes back to the crypto wars of the 1990s.
Oh, classic example.
Right. The U.S. government realized that public key cryptography was incredibly powerful, so they classified it as a munition under the International Traffic in Arms Regulations. They were literally treating mathematical formulas like Tomahawk missiles.
Yeah, they investigated developers, tried to mandate backdoor access with a Clipper chip.
And eventually the whole thing collapsed because, well, you can't ban math. Civil liberties advocates won. So isn't this export control just the crypto wars playing out again with the same inevitable failure?
It's tempting to think that. The crypto wars offer a great historical parallel for government overreach, but the core technology makes it an incomplete analogy.
How so?
Because cryptography basically does one thing perfectly. It hides information. AI does not just hide information. It generates, analyzes, and acts upon it autonomously. The destructive footprint is infinitely wider.
Okay, that's a fair distinction.
Listen to the assessment from General Joshua Rudd. He runs both the NSA and Cyber Command. According to the reporting, General Rudd testified that the Mythos model broke into almost all of our classified systems.
Wait, broke into classified systems, how long did that take?
It didn't take weeks. It took hours.
In hours. Wow. That fundamentally changes the threat matrix. If a system can autonomously penetrate classified networks at that speed, we aren't talking about encryption anymore.
No, we are talking about a weapon of mass disruption. This is why national security experts argue that the proper historical parallel isn't the crypto wars. It's the McMahon Act of 1946.
Oh, the severing of nuclear cooperation.
Yes. During the Manhattan Project, British scientists were instrumental. They were literally in the room helping design the bomb.
Right, it was a joint effort.
But the moment the war ended, the U.S. Congress looked at the devastating power of the atom and just slammed the door shut. The McMahon Act legally severed all nuclear research cooperation with foreign countries. instantly locking Britain out of the very technology they helped build.
Which sounds exactly like what's happening to that British developer in San Francisco right now.
Exactly. America decided that the strategic advantage was simply too dangerous to share, even with its closest friends.
And the driving force behind that isolationism today is the looming threshold of recursive self-improvement, or RSI.
Yes, RSI is the real ghost in the machine here.
For anyone listening who might not spend their weekends, reading dense AI white papers, RSI is essentially the point where an AI model becomes capable of analyzing its own architecture and writing a smarter, more efficient version of itself.
And then that smarter version writes an even smarter version. The feedback loop compresses. It's an intelligence explosion that removes human engineers as the bottleneck for progress.
It just accelerates infinitely.
Right. And right now the consensus is that America holds roughly a 1-year lead over China in frontier AI.
Which in traditional tech cycles is, what, nothing. That's barely one hardware generation.
Exactly. But in an RSI scenario, a 1-year lead is an eternity. If an American lab triggers an intelligence explosion, that slight advantage compounds exponentially.
So within weeks, the gap could become permanent and completely unbridgeable.
Yes. From a purely defensive zero-sum perspective, you can totally see why the national security apparatus would be absolutely desperate to build a fortress around that technology before RSI is achieved.
Okay, the theoretical logic makes sense. But the practical reality of hoarding technology historically backfires, right? Go back to your nuclear analogy. The McMahon Act didn't prevent Britain from getting the bomb.
No, it didn't.
It just forced them to develop their own independent nuclear program, which they did a few years later anyway. Doesn't building a digital fortress around Anthropic just guarantee a frantic, totally unregulated global arms race?
That's the huge risk.
You're basically telling the rest of the world, you can't use our extensively safety-tested models, which forces them to build their own completely untested systems in the dark.
And we are already watching that geopolitical blowback happen in real time. The betrayal felt by America's allies right now is profound.
I can imagine.
International banks and foreign government agencies spent the past year integrating Mythos into their critical infrastructure. They signed long-term contracts, built out compliance frameworks, and then, literally without a single warning, their access tokens were revoked.
The sheer scope of the lockout is what really blows my mind. The administration didn't even carve out an exemption for the Five Eyes Intelligence Alliance.
Yeah, I did.
Australia, Britain, Canada, and New Zealand. These are countries that seamlessly share the most heavily classified signals intelligence with the NSA, and they're being treated like adversaries. Even Britain's AI Security Institute was blocked.
Which is crazy.
Right. They are arguably the premier organization on Earth for testing AI safety, and they can't even log in.
And the timing is just brutal for those allies, too. They are currently dealing with the fallout from the U.S. Congress failing to renew crucial surveillance powers. So you have allied intelligence agencies suddenly realizing that the United States is perfectly willing to cut their digital supply lines on a whim.
That's a terrifying realization for an ally.
The strategic lesson is obvious, and Tom Tugendhat, a former British security minister, voiced it very clearly. Every allied nation must now prioritize absolute digital sovereignty. They just cannot rely on American infrastructure anymore.
But the article points out a massive structural catch-22 in that quest for sovereignty. Anton Leicht at the Carnegie Endowment asks the obvious question. How exactly does a middle power nation train its own localized clone of a model like Fable?
Right, because they can't just spin it up on standard computers.
Exactly. They need tens of thousands of frontier physical chips, like the latest NVIDIA hardware, just to process the data.
And who controls the export of those physical chips? The exact same U.S. Commerce Department that just banned the software.
So America's allies are caught in a technological chokehold. They are banned from using the cloud software, and they are legally restricted from buying the hardware necessary to build an alternative.
Yeah, while intelligence agencies might eventually negotiate some back-channel access through classified memorandums, the private sectors in those allied nations are completely paralyzed.
Which brings us to the actual physical implementation of this policy inside the United States, because the more you look at the mechanics of this ban, the more absurd it becomes.
Oh, the logistics are a nightmare.
Well, let's talk about the concept of a deemed export. Helen Toner from Georgetown University points out what this actually means for the tech workforce. When a foreign national looks at technical data inside the U.S., the government legally deems that an export to their home country.
It creates an immediate logistical nightmare for AI development. The top-tier talent pool in machine learning is heavily international.
Very much so.
So if you enforce this strict border, you are telling an American company that the brilliant engineers from London, Toronto, or Bangalore who were physically sitting in an office in San Francisco can no longer look at their own monitors.
That's unbelievable.
The moment their eyes process the source code, Anthropic is technically violating federal export law.
The R&D pipeline just freezes. I mean, you have to partition your own office. You have compliance officers frantically trying to adjust GitHub repository permissions to make sure a Canadian engineer doesn't accidentally review a pull request.
Yeah.
The policy actively cannibalizes the American innovation it claims to protect.
And outside of the laboratory walls, the ban is practically unenforceable anyway. Cynthia Kaiser, who used to work in the FBI's cyber division, completely dismantles the idea of a digital border wall.
Because of the black market.
Exactly. The black market for cloud compute is already robust.
Yeah.
Hackers and foreign state actors don't need to physically cross a border. They just buy American digital identities through shell companies.
It's the ultimate irony. We are talking about the most sophisticated intelligence apparatus in human history, trying to lock down a technology that can penetrate classified networks in hours.
Right.
And their entire defense strategy can be defeated by a teenager with a crypto wallet, a commercial VPN, and a fake Delaware LLC.
It's almost comical. We already know Chinese users easily bypass the geo-restrictions Anthropic placed on its older Claude models every single day.
Right. The idea that a piece of paper from the Commerce Department is going to stop a dedicated adversary from accessing an API is pure theater.
But the theater, unfortunately, has real consequences for the stability of AI governance. If we zoom out and look at the administration's broader pattern of behavior, we are witnessing an era of severe policy whiplash.
There is no coherent grand strategy, is there? It is entirely reactionary.
Completely reactionary.
Let's trace that whiplash for you listening, because the timeline is enough to give anyone vertigo. First, the administration comes in and immediately rolls back previous AI safety regulations, waving the flag of a hands-off, deregulatory free market.
Right. Let innovation thrive.
Then they authorize the sale of highly advanced AI chips to China. Then they reverse course in February with a clumsy attempt to designate Anthropic a supply chain risk. Fast forward to June 2nd, the president signs an executive order establishing a totally voluntary light-touch framework for AI labs.
A framework that, by the way, was widely criticized for being completely toothless.
Right. And then, mere days later, they execute this draconian, mandatory, sweeping ban that locks out the entire planet. The whiplash creates an environment where long-term planning is just impossible.
And the most dangerous casualty of this chaos is the complete death of transparency.
That is the pivotal shift, isn't it?
It really is. The government has an advisory body called the Center for AI Standards and Innovation. In a crisis involving model safety and jailbreaks, this is precisely the independent expert body you would want, evaluating the threat and publishing findings.
That's what they're there for.
Instead, the administration explicitly instructed them to stop publishing public reports. They threw a blackout blanket over their own safety analysts.
The tragic irony in all of this is Dario Amodei's position. Just days before this ban dropped, Anthropic's CEO published an essay actively begging the government for serious and binding regulation of AI.
He literally asked for it.
He wasn't asking to be left alone. He was asking for a transparent legal framework that everyone could understand and operate within. Instead of clear rules of the road, the industry got hit by an opaque, unpredictable national security hammer.
And when advanced AI becomes purely a matter of national security, the governance of it vanishes into a black box. The public loses visibility.
The researchers lose the ability to collaborate.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the companies tasked with building the future are forced to navigate a trillion-dollar R&D pipeline where the rules can be rewritten on a Friday afternoon based on an undisclosed threat or, political leverage.
It really forces you to question the entire premise of governing intelligence through geography. Which brings us to a final thought for you to mull over today.
Yeah, let's go back to RSI.
Right. We talked about recursive self-improvement, an AI that can fundamentally outthink its human creators, writing code we can't even comprehend. If we reach that point, how long will human-written export laws even matter?
That's the real question.
If a digital entity realizes that the server farms it needs to expand its own architecture are physically located in Europe or Asia, does it care about the Commerce Department's export administration regulations? We're desperately trying to draw physical borders on a map to contain an intelligence that lives in the cloud.
And eventually, the technology might simply outgrow our legal jurisdiction entirely.
It's a sobering reality check. We are trying to govern the architecture of the future using the bureaucratic tools of the past.
It really is.
Thanks for listening. Follow us for daily insights into world affairs, and don't forget to like, comment, and share.